Hey everybody, how's it going? Hope you're all having a lovely day. I just got some new clothes today that actually fit from a proper clothing store since the airline lost all my clothes. It's probably something that needed to happen. I've lost about 14 pounds in the past month, so I kind of needed to buy new clothes to replace the stuff that no longer fit me anyway, so I see it as a plus. And since I'm a cheapskate, it was mostly cheap-ass t-shirts like this. Anyway, what I'd like to discuss today is a question that I received from a regular viewer of the channel who also posts in the Discord regularly. It is, what is your opinion on those that up and quit a job without any notice or conversation? Would they be rehirable? So I wanted to talk about this topic and my answer to it as somebody who has quit a job with no notice and then also become a business owner who hires people sometimes who have quit a job with no notice. So I've been on both sides of this before, so I think I have a unique perspective. When I worked at Modell's Sporting Goods, the reason that I quit was because I found a better paying job, and regardless of how much value I brought the company, they were not open to ever changing my compensation based on that value. So even if sales went up, even if I was able to get more merchandise out, I was always going to make $6 an hour with a 17.5% raise every single year, which literally did not even keep up with minimum wage. So I left. Now, I put in my 2 weeks notice. The reason I quit with no notice was because of a specific altercation that I had with a manager. So the air conditioning went out, and this was a place that had an aluminum, or if Dave Jones is watching, an aluminum roof. And if you have the sun beating down on you in the middle of June in New York City summer, and you have an aluminum roof, that is painful. And they had polyester jerseys you had to wear with your name tag. Since there was no air conditioning, when it was over 94 degrees in the store, I decided to take off my polyester jersey. So I only had my t-shirt on, which looks similar to this, and I had my lanyard on. And the manager says, you need to have the polyester jersey on. And I said, listen, it's 95 degrees. We're unloading all the stock. Do you mind if I just have this on? And he just looks at us and goes, pussy. And, it's like, I gave you 2 weeks notice. I've really done a good job here. Like, the actual sales figures in my department were going up because I was taking all the merchandise out of the stockroom, finding barcodes for it so it was actually sellable again, which everybody else was avoiding doing, and putting it on the shelves, doing everything I was supposed to for $6 an hour. And I kind of had this tinge that he knew that I was leaving for something else. I had found a job at Good Temps that paid $12 an hour, which in 2006 made me feel like I was rich. I was balling. I was going to be making almost $1,000 a month. Crazy. Anyway, and he knew this. And he was just looking to push my buttons, and I just wasn't having it. So I took off my jersey, I took off my lanyard, I put it down, I went home, I never came back. I do believe that. Now, on the employer side, this is where it gets kind of tricky. So I've hired people that I've stolen from other companies on a regular basis. Sometimes they quit with notice, sometimes they quit without notice, and oftentimes I actually know the person that's employing them because in 2 of the cases I actually worked at the place that they had worked at. And what it really comes down to here is going to be how you explain it. So if you simply say something like this, my boss was an ass, so I quit, or my boss was abusive, or he was mean, or so I quit with no notice, you're probably not going to get hired. However, if you're able to give a little bit of context, you will. So for instance, if you say something like, well, I put in my 2 weeks notice, and then right after I put in my 2 weeks notice, the air conditioner died, and when I decided to do my work without a polyester jersey on, I was called a pussy by the manager repeatedly, so I decided that I didn't want to be there anymore, and I left. There's a difference. If you just say my boss was an ass, you're probably not going to get it. If you actually explain the situation, there's a chance that you get it. The reason is because asshole is very subjective, and I realize I've just said something that's probably going to be clipped a million times in the worst possible way, but when you say this boss was abusive, this boss was an asshole, anything like that, that's very subjective in nature, and it means different things to different people. Some people think their boss is abusive because their boss actually beats them. Some people think their boss is abusive simply because they actually expect them to show up to work. I had an employee a long time ago that thought that I was being abusive because they were in the store by themselves and they did not have anybody else there for about 45 minutes of time. That was considered abuse. That was their benchmark for abuse. So no. But some people think abuse is, you actually are beating them, you're screaming at them, you're yelling at them, you're giving them 80 or 120-hour work weeks. So these things mean different things to different people. And something that I've noticed with my business is I have actually hired people with bosses that were genuinely horrible because I worked for those bosses. I know how bad they are. I know that they're trying to pay you under minimum wage off the books. I know that they're trying to do shit like, take away your vacation days and not tell you that you even have a right to them because you're an immigrant who doesn't know the labor laws in this country. I know what they're like, and it would be okay if you badmouth them. And those people didn't badmouth that boss. There was one guy, he had this very Eastern European demeanor where he didn't have to actually say what it was he thought. He just had a way with his words where the way he said the words would kind of tell you the whole story, and just he was very good at dressing people down without using a single curse word or anything negative. And it was a talent, and I wish he was still around for it. Unfortunately, he passed away last year, but he had nothing bad to say about his boss, who I knew was horrible. And he actually wound up being an amazing employee. I've had people that have, this has been very, very consistent, where the people that just say my old boss was an asshole, every single time I've had that happen, they've been a horrible employee. Like literally 100% of the time. Now, in the beginning, I thought, well, I've worked for assholes before. I understand. Sure, come work here. But then what I come to realize later in the game is that what you consider them being abusive is they asked you to like do work. Like when you say they're an asshole, that's because the day starts at 12 and they actually expected you to show up at 12. So that the customers that are waiting outside for you to open the door don't leave a 1-star review and there's nobody there. And this is why it's important to actually give the full details. Now, what I told this individual is that if you did quit a job with no notice, it really is going to be one of those things where A, I'm going to want to know the story, but B, when you explain the story, you really should explain it in a way where you're not using, they were abusive, they were assholes, this, that, or the other. Don't use the adjectives yourself. Tell the story and let them come up with the adjectives in their mind. Don't say he was abusive. Say this is the stuff that they did and this is how I responded. I think that gives you a much better chance of getting hired. Also, what I think helps is having a larger network. So Dale Doughton has this book called The Gifted Boss, which I think is an amazing book, and I wish I had read it sooner. And he talks about how essentially once you're at the point of putting up a help wanted sign, you're kind of already screwed, and you're going to be very, very skeptical and just honestly looking for reasons to reject everybody who shows up. Most of the people that you hire that are going to wind up being amazing are people that you already know. You already know their character, you know who they are, you know how they work, and once their opportunity is gone, well, now you can give them an opportunity here. And there's already kind of that trust built up because you've already seen what they do. I have a friend in North Carolina that used to actually hire people who were the best waitresses at a restaurant to be the customer service in his store for that reason. Because again, anybody can lie and put on a good face in an interview, but when he's able to see, okay, this is the type of work you do when your boss isn't looking. This is the way you treat customers when your boss isn't looking. This is how well you remember the orders and all the little modifications that 13 people wanted when your boss isn't looking. Now I know the type of work you're going to do, not based on an interview where you could just put your best foot forward, but how you actually do it in your normal job. And then he would, to either A, if they're quitting, or B, if they're being paid poorly, he would offer them a better salary to go work there. And this is one of the ways that you're going to have to interact with people in order to open up your possibilities of getting a job if you quit with no notice. If I know who you are and I know your character and I know your work ethic and I feel like I know you as a human being, I'm not going to really care if you quit a job with no notice because I know who you are and I know that if you did that, you probably did it for a really damn good reason that I would as well. I think something that's really important to remember at the end of the day is that bosses are people. I know this is a very unpopular thing to say at this point in time, but bosses are people. Again, I always try to remember what my first job was like. I always try to remember what my second and third and fourth jobs were like, which I am. The second, third, and fourth, I all got fired from. I try to remember what this experience was like as an employer so that I don't do the things that those bosses did. But also at the end of the day, like a lot of people, they didn't just start out in management. They didn't start out as the CEO of a company, the owner of a company. A lot of them probably started out with some garbage job, putting price tags on basketballs at Model Sporting Goods and trying to get all the merchandise to have barcodes on it again so that it would actually sell for a company that wouldn't give you anything if you sold more. But anyway, you can tell probably I'm still salty 16 years later. But many bosses did start out as people. They are human beings. They're not just always people that are just looking at a checkbox. And if you're able to engage with them on a human level, there is a chance of you getting hired again. Now, what I probably would not hire somebody if they did is if they lied about it. If they said, yeah, I quit, I gave this much notice, and then I figure out that they lied about it, that would be a giant red flag. Because again, if you're okay lying to me now, how do I know that you're not lying to me in the future? So I would strongly recommend against lying about it, because that is, again, that would be an immediate, I'm not hiring you. I'm just kind of curious what you all think of this. Let me know what you think in your thoughts down below. And if you have any other similar types of questions, I'm happy to answer. I also realize that, one of my good friends says this all the time. Anytime I answer a question saying why I disagree with him on something, he'll say not everybody is you, or not every business owner is you, not every boss is you. So I understand that this is not going to apply to everybody, but I can only answer this question from my perspective. And I think that there's probably more business owners out there that do have this perspective, because this is the last thing I should say, something that you should really understand, scam. Many people that become business owners became business owners because they were sick and tired of their job. So when you're talking about people that quit their job with no notice, I would imagine that you probably have a very high representation of people with that type of mindset that maybe did that are business owners that quit their job with no notice, because that's how a lot of people start businesses. It's not that they have this big plan and they write it all out and they go get their MBA and then they open a business after going to business school. It's that they're just so effing pissed off at where they work that that's their only option. Like, okay, I just quit my job. I guess I have to make my own job or I'm screwed. And so there's a good chance that they will be sympathetic. Again, just remember, don't say my old boss was an asshole. They were mean. They were abusive. Don't do that, because what you're doing is, again, you're trying to get the other person to come to a conclusion, and that doesn't work. Anytime you try to swing the pendulum over here, it's going to swing right back in the other direction. That's one of the rules in Gym Camp Start With No. What you want to do is you want to just explain what happened, and concisely and honestly, and let them come to their conclusion. And if that person actually is an asshole, or is calling you a pussy because you didn't want to wear a polyester jersey in 95-degree weather while you're stocking shelves, then that job interviewer most likely will come to that conclusion themselves and not really care. But just avoid that type of language. Avoid saying they were an asshole, they were abusive, they were mean. Tell the actual story, keep it short and concise, and let them come to their own conclusion. That's it for today, and as always, I hope you learned something. I'll see you all in the next video. Bye now.